My father gave me 5 minutes to sign over my company. He said it calmly, almost warmly, like he was offering me a way out. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were 3 psychiatric evaluations declaring me unstable and unfit to manage my own finances. He said if I did not sign, he would file them in the morning. I looked at the envelope. I looked at him. Then I reached under my chair. I pulled out a legal binder and set it on the table between us. "You're mistaken," I said. "I didn't come here to negotiate. I came to serve an eviction notice." My father spent 5 years telling the world I was nothing without him. He froze my accounts. He pulled my health insurance. He quietly made calls to every contact I had in this city and poisoned every door before I could knock on it. If you have ever built something from nothing while someone who was supposed to love you tried to make sure you failed, you already know how this feels. Subscribe. This story ends in one of the most specific and satisfying ways I have ever told. I do not want you to miss a single second of it. My name is Mara. I own a tile and stone renovation company based in Pittsburgh. On the morning this story ends, my business was valued at $580 million. I was 29 years old. I had started with 1 commercial job and a rented tile saw. Every morning before I leave the house, I water a dead succulent on my windowsill. It has been dead for over a year. I have never thrown it out. I do not know exactly why I keep doing it. I just do. My office is in a converted warehouse in the Strip District. The floors are polished concrete. I laid them myself. I was standing at the window watching Pittsburgh when the Business Channel ran the ticker across the bottom of the screen. OSE Renovation Group, valued at $580 million. I stood there for a moment. That number represented 5 years of cracked hands and skipped meals and nights I did not think we were going to make it. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from my father, Roland. "Family dinner, 7 p.m., Fox Chapel. Do not be late." No congratulations, no pride, just a command, worded like a court order. My stomach tightened. That was old muscle memory, something left over from being his daughter. What nobody knew that morning was that I had already seen the document. 2 days earlier, my younger brother Kwame had sent me a bluey photo from inside the Fox Chapel Manor. He had pulled a crumpled page from Roland's study bin. It was a final notice of default from a private equity lender called Harrow Bridge Capital. $28 million in bridge loans, personally guaranteed by Roland, secured by 51% of his voting shares in OSE Holdings, due in full within 48 hours. I stared at that number for a long time. My father was not calling me home to celebrate. He was not calling me to apologize. He was drowning. He had seen my valuation on the news. He saw a life raft. What nobody in that room knew was that I had already decided what I was going to do about it. 5 years earlier, Roland had locked the iron gate of the Fox Chapel Manor in my face. I had come home to tell him I was marrying Dominic. Dominic was a mosaic artist. He made almost nothing at the time. Roland called him a charity case with grout under his fingernails. He told me that if I married a man with no standing, I was finished as far as the OSE name was concerned. He froze my access to the family operating accounts that same evening. He pulled my health coverage 3 days later. Then he made calls. Quietly, carefully. He contacted every commercial property firm in Pittsburgh and told them that if they hired Dominic for any project, Roland would pull every referral and financing relationship he held with them. He never told me. He never told Dominic. He just watched us try to find work in a city that had been quietly closed to us. Dominic and I lived in a 1-room apartment above a dry cleaner in Lawrenceville. Critical. We ate rice and canned beans. We worked nights and weekends in a derelict boutique hotel we had purchased for almost nothing. Our hands cracked in the November cold. Roland checked our credit reports occasionally. He told me this himself later. He wanted to see how close we were to breaking. He called that parenting. He said he had to let me hit the floor so I would remember who held the ladder. I almost deleted the text from Roland. I sat at my desk for a long time with my thumb over the screen. Then I thought about Kwame's photo, the crumpled page in the bin. $28 million due in 48 hours. I thought about the 5 years, the closed doors, the credit reports. My thumb moved off delete. I put the phone down. I picked up a different number and made a call. I need to pause here. Has anyone ever treated your work like it was invisible? Like what you built did not count because it did not look the way they expected? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. I called my lead counsel and said 4 words. Buy the debt note. I told him to contact Harrow Bridge Capital directly. I told him to pay whatever premium they wanted. I told him to get the paper in my name before 6 p.m. that evening. He did not ask why. He said he would call me back within the hour. I did not call Dominic. I did not call my therapist, even though I had an appointment scheduled for the next morning. I went down to the parking garage and sat in my truck for a few minutes. I gripped the wheel. I thought, what if I have read this wrong? What if that document from Kwame is older than he thinks? What if Roland is scared and broken, and this is the most damaged version of caring he knows how to show? I sat with that for about 90 seconds. Then I started the truck. I was not going to my father's house. I was going to visit a debtor. When I stepped into the elevator on the way down, I caught my reflection in the stainless steel doors. The girl who used to flinch at Roland's voicemails was not there anymore. They had no idea what was coming. The Fox Chapel Manor is all stone and dark wood, every surface polished to the point of discomfort. Late November, the first hard frost had glazed the back garden overnight. The bare trees looked like something drawn in charcoal. My mother Vivian sat to my right at the dining table. She was folding and refolding her cloth napkin. She would not look at me. My brother Kwame sat across from me. He was staring at an untouched bread roll. He had not moved since I arrived. Roland sat at the head of the table. He reached for the decanter and poured himself a glass of single malt scotch. The bottle retails for over $2,000. As he tipped the decanter, I saw it, a faint tremor in his wrist. The heavy crystal shook against the rim. He set the bottle down too fast, too hard. He was afraid. I had never seen that before in my life, not once. He spoke first. He said my valuation was beginner's luck. He called Dominic a hobbyist. The word came out quiet and practiced, the way it always did, like the contempt was too old to require effort. 5 years ago, that tone would have made me look at my plate. Tonight, I just watched the sweat form along his collar. Then he slid the manila envelope across the table. I opened it. 3 psychiatric evaluations, an emergency conservatorship petition, all signed, all stamped, ready to file the next morning with the Allegheny County courts. The signature on the top evaluation belonged to Dr. Fenwick Rourke, a psychiatrist who had seen me once for anxiety when I was 15. I had not spoken to him in 14 years. I said his name out loud. I kept my voice flat. I pointed out that he had no current treatment relationship with me and would face perjury charges before lunch. Roland explained that Dr. Rourke was not concerned about his license. He was concerned about the $190,000 in personal debts that Roland had quietly settled for him 2 years ago. Rourke writes what Roland tells him to write. Roland leaned forward. "Sign the transfer," he said, "or Vance files in the morning and your stock collapses and I take over anyway." He looked satisfied. He looked like a man who had just played an ace. I had one question before I opened the binder. I asked why Dominic. I told Roland that Dominic is talented at his work, that he has been nothing but good to me. I asked why Roland had hated him enough to try to grind us into the ground. Roland leaned back in his chair. He looked relaxed. He said he never hated Dominic. Dominic was just a variable in a lesson I needed to learn. He admitted the calls he made to the Pittsburgh firms. He admitted the credit report checks. He said he checked them occasionally, just to see how close we were. He called it parenting. He said he had to let me hit the floor so I would remember who held the ladder. I sat very still. Before I reached for the binder, I looked at Kwame. I said, quietly, almost to myself, "You knew all of this, didn't you?" It was not really a question. Kwame opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the bread roll. Then he said, "I knew some of it." A long pause. "Not all of it." Another pause. "I'm sorry." He set it to the table. I nodded. There was nothing else to say. I turned back to Roland. I slid the envelope back across the table. I told him I also love leverage. Let's talk about his. I opened the legal binder. Pennsylvania state seals on every page. I walked Roland through it. 6 months ago, he had taken a $28 million bridge loan from Harrow Bridge Capital. Short-term, high interest, personally guaranteed, secured by 51% of his voting shares in OSE Holdings. He had defaulted. Harrow Bridge had offloaded the toxic note last week. I bought it. I owned the debt. I owned the default clause. I was calling the loan. Full repayment. $28 million. Due immediately. Roland's chair hit the floor. He lunged across the table for the binder. He screamed, "Fraud." Kwame got to his feet. Roland shoved him sideways into the glass cabinet behind him. A crystal decanter hit the stone floor and shattered. Roland tore at the binder's pages. I picked up my phone. I sent one word to my legal team. Send. I told Roland to tear it up, burn it if he wanted. It did not matter. My team had been waiting for that signal. They had filed the confession of judgment with the Allegheny County clerk 40 minutes ago. It was already public record. Under the security agreement Roland had signed with Harrow Bridge, a secured creditor can exercise immediate control over pledged voting shares upon default. I was the creditor. I had just exercised that right. I owned his shares. I controlled the board. I controlled the building. All 3 phones on the table buzzed at once. Board secretary notification. Change of control confirmed. Roland dropped the binder. He sank back into his chair. The color left his face the way heat leaves a room when you open a window in November. He turned to Vivian. He rasped her name. He asked her to say something. Vivian did not look at Roland. She looked at me. Her face was frightened. Then something underneath that shifted. I have seen that expression on clients who realize mid-conversation they have been in a bad contract for years and they are only now reading the terms clearly. She said nothing. She took a sip of water. Kwame picked up his wine glass. He had not touched it all night. He took one slow drink. He set it down. He met my eyes. The left corner of his mouth moved just slightly. That was enough. I told Roland he had 30 days to vacate the executive suite at the OSE Holdings building downtown. Security had already been notified. His access pass would expire at midnight tonight. Tomorrow he could return with an escort to collect personal items. He would leave the files. My team would audit the books on Monday. If I found misappropriated funds, I would not just remove him. I would prosecute. I did not call him Dad. I picked up my coat. My heels were quiet on the stone floor of the foyer. Behind me, a chair scraped. His voice broke when he shouted. He said I was ungrateful. He said I was nothing without him. He said he made me. I walked past the portraits in the hallway, out the front door. The November air hit my face, cold, sharp, clean. I went down the steps to my truck and I did not look back. When I got home, Dominic was in the kitchen, flour on his forearms, focaccia proofing on the counter, low music playing. He turned when I walked in. He looked at my face for 1 second. He handed me a glass of wine without a word. He did not ask what happened. He did not ask if I had won. He just said, "Food's almost ready." I sat at the counter and let everything I had been carrying since that morning go somewhere. "It's done," I said. "He's out." Dominic came around and held me. No speech, no celebration. He just held me until my shoulders dropped. "Okay," he said quietly. "We're okay." We ate at the kitchen table because November was too cold for the balcony. We talked about the Shadyside renovation job. We talked about Portuguese limestone versus reclaimed marble. We talked about whether to get a dog before the next busy season. We did not talk about Roland. 3 months later, I stood in the executive office on the 14th floor of the Osei Holdings building. The name on the door had been changed. The logo on the building had been updated to the clean wordmark of the renovation group. I touched the small gold earrings at my ears. They had belonged to my grandmother. A week after the dinner, a small package arrived with no return address. Inside were the earrings and a card. 3 words. She saved these. I did not keep them for sentiment. I kept them as a reminder of what survives when someone tries very hard to make sure it doesn't. Some people spend years trying to be the ladder someone else needs. They do not notice when the person they were trying to control has already built their own. Tell me something. If this had been you, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have given him one more chance? Drop it in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story right now, send it to them. They will know why. If this story gave you that feeling, that specific satisfaction of watching the truth finally land exactly where it should, subscribe. Because I have more. Stories about people who were written off and counted out, who then made sure that was the last mistake anyone made. See you in the next one.